Hello? Okay, we're on. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're now going to continue with the next session, which in this specific instance actually is not simply a seminar, but rather a public consultation, or the end of a public consultation process for the Blue Line, which is a document that is in draft form at the moment, was released by us by CIBJO about 4 months ago, and relates to descriptive terminology used to describe the movement of goods and also practices in the jewelry supply chain, or the responsible jewelry supply chain. What we're going to do over here actually is everybody on the stage here today, including myself, we're part of a committee called the Responsible Jewelry Nomenclature or Responsible Supply Chain Nomenclature Committee. And we produced this document over a period of time. And we are now ending the end of that process over here, where we are turning to the jewelry public to comment and suggest amendments and changes to the document itself. With me on the stage is the president of CIBJO, going from the far end, Gaetano Cavalieri, who is also co-chair of the committee. Feril Zaruki, who is the Chief Trade and Industry Officer at De Beers, who also, together with Gaetano, co-chaired the committee. On the screen, I don't know if we don't see her at the moment, she'll be joining us, there she is, Purvi Shah, okay, who is the lead and has been coordinating the public consultation process. To my left, Raluca Angel, who is the head of external affairs and industry relations at the Natural Diamond Council. To her left is Ken Scarrett, who is the CIBJO vice president, also president of CIBJO Sector A, which deals with gem materials. And at the far end, Suzanne Brook, who is the general manager of standards at the Responsible Jewellery Council. What we plan to do is we will provide you with a little bit of background of the process that we followed. We'll then go through some of the terminology and the discussion of the terminology that took place within the committee. Then provide you some of the feedback that we've already seen, and then we'll open it to you, and you may comment as well. Gaetano, starting with you. CIBJO has long been concerned with the development of harmonized standards and nomenclature for the jewelry industry. Could you let us know, how did this Blue List initiative come into being, and what differentiates this list from the other blue books that CIBJO is so well known for?
Well, let me first thank the audience present and those who are online. And of course, I would like to thank the Italian exhibition group for allowing us to have these different sessions yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Let me also acknowledge the presence of the president of RJC, Dave Maleski, the executive director of the Watch and Jewelry Initiative, our fellow CIBJO president and members, and all of you. Thank you very much. Going to your question, I would like to go back to the time when myself and this wonderful, nice young lady had a conversation on the phone, which exactly happened by the end of 2018, where we were talking about the importance of the language used in particular in our industry. Even though English is not my mother language, but still we were arguing the fact that very often the use of certain terminology, choosing one word instead of another, was bringing to a different conclusion, considering that we all operate worldwide. Sometimes the meaning of the wording is different. It depends in which context and which continent you are talking. So we decided to start moving on, setting up a committee in relation of the nomenclature used in our industry. Obviously, one of the elements that we were discussing at the time as well today was the different code of conducts, code of ethics, sustainability at the time as well as today, and the principles that we all are complying, meaning the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, said that, we start moving on. We made a list of words, and then we enlarge the group of people, setting up, let's say, a selection of experts that, in our opinion, may bring inputs into this committee. And we decided with Feriel that this was, at the beginning, a very deep work under a certain point of view, and talking with Pervi that we have online today, I may remember that one in our conversation I said I have 10 dictionaries on my table, apart the internet itself, and trying to understand the wording. So at the end of the day, and I want again express my deep thanks to all of you for what you are personally and for what you represent, each one of you, for the contribution. And again, at the end of the day is the confidence that we can get from the consumer into our industry in order to deliver what we have to deliver properly. We want to support, without any condition, the industry as it is, and improve the quality of this industry every day as much as we can. Personally, I am very imperfect, and I do not pretend to be, but certainly the lessons that I have learned during these years and the year to go has been massive. So thank you very much for that, and I give the floor back to you, Stephen.
Thank you. Then could we have the slide up on the screen behind? Sorry, I'm going to go back. We're going to talk a little bit about process, and I'm going to ask Feriel to continue. But essentially, what we've been doing this for going on close to 7 years, when I talk about process, we're talking about the process by which the list of terms that comprise the blue list, how they were selected, how were they analyzed and discussed, what was done within the process or within the committee to make sure that everything was inclusive, why did it take us so long, and what will ensure that the list that we have remains relevant. All of that I'm going to ask Feriel to address.
Thanks, Stephen. And I think that Gaetano gave you the backstory where we were discussing, this is a problem. Within the industry, we're using the same words to describe different things. And Gaetano said English is not his first language. Can I ask all of you to raise your hand if English is your first language? Okay. So, and in the audience? Right, so for the majority, you can see that actually words matter as we try and understand each other. And if within the trade we're speaking in a way that's not clear, how do we expect to be speaking with clarity to the consumer, given that consumer confidence is the major source of value for the trade? And so when I called Gaetano about this, I went to Gaetano because he's a visionary, and he runs an organization, unlike all other organizations, holds all jewelry materials under its umbrella. So wouldn't it be great for us to work with CIBJO on this? And I thank you for your support. Now, it's been 7 years. Yes, there's been some pauses because, you know, things happened in the last 7 years. But essentially what we did was we took it out of the internal conversation, and we did a lot of research to see how retailers were speaking online to the consumer. And so we didn't select the words. The words were selected based on the use of the way that retailers were speaking to consumers. And we decided, okay, we can divide these words into business claims. So you'll see on the screen, you've got business claims, you've got sourcing claims, you've got product claims, tracing claims, all with words that are being used interchangeably. And we pulled out dictionaries, we pulled out legal documents, international standards, and we found out that actually there is a big gap in the market. There's no clear view on what these words mean. And so let's pull together a committee to use all of the existing documentation around this and come up with words that would be legally acceptable, that would be trade acceptable, that would be fitting to the way this industry works. We also looked at claims and words to avoid, which are on the screen. And so the guidance that we've come up with, that we've pushed out for public consultation, will tell you these are the definitions that we have landed on as a committee of diverse views for people with lots of different backgrounds, but also from different parts of the industry, upstream, midstream, downstream, across different product, diamonds, jewelry, gold, colored stones. And we've put it out now for public consultation, not just for the trade, right, but also for the wider public. It's publicly available. And we've been taking in a lot of very, very useful commentary. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
I'd like to direct the next question to Purvi on the screen. Purvi, as I said, has been coordinating the consultation process itself. We'll get to the question of some of the results that we had toward the end of the discussion, but just briefly, Purvi, could you address how the consultation process itself was designed? It's an integral part of what we've been doing. How is the feedback being collected? And then how will we use the feedback before we produce the final document? Maybe if we can return Purvi to the screen behind us.
Thank you so much, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody, and I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, you hear you fine. Yeah?
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve, for this question. So, as Ferial and Gaetano have mentioned, this has been work that's been ongoing for quite some time, and we feel it's very, very important to secure the views across the industry. We believe that together we are much better. We need to consult and capture. While we had so many voices, as Ferial pointed out, in the committee, we needed to hear from the wider collection of the industry, and we believe that the sum is greater than the individual parts. So that is what this consultation is seeking to capture, is the views of the industry, and so that we can incorporate those. The way we are capturing feedback is very simple. It's an online form on the CIBJO website, directly linked to the guidance, so to the blue list itself. And we've asked questions that are very direct and also allowed a lot of room for views to be expressed through open text, allowing everyone to input as they wish to. And so far we've had some great feedback, and I think we will come back to that later.
Thanks. Just one more before we start getting to the next section. Farrell, and that's some of the concern that we've actually heard from people in the industry itself over here. But will the blue list itself supersede any of the compliance systems that are operating in the industry?
No, absolutely not. It's there to provide clarity within the existing frameworks. So you'll notice that the words that have been selected for us through the data scrapers are things like, responsible sourcing, ethical sourcing, sustainably sourced. They're being used interchangeably. What do we mean when we say we've sourced this responsibly or we've sourced this ethically? And so it will have zero impact on all the existing standards, but we've been working, for example, the RJC has been part of our committee, right? And so as this gets adopted and we agree on the clarity, the words that exist within the RJC will now have a definition that is backed by the CIBJO blue list.
Okay, what we're going to do now, and we're going to do this for the next few minutes over here, we're going to try to take you through some of the process that we went through in compiling the list. Essentially, words matter, and the exact choice of the word that you use over here carries with it a specific meaning. I think that was the assumption that we worked on from the very beginning. So what we've done is that we've chosen groups of words over here that often are used interchangeably, that people might think they are synonyms one for the other. And our contention is that if you use one rather than the other, you are trying to convey a specific meaning. So we'll start with Suzanne. We spoke about the Responsible Jewellery Council, so we let her take the first one. I'd like to relate to the discussion that differentiated between three descriptive terms. And that's responsible, that's one, ethical is the second, and sustainable is the third.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, thank you very much. And again, thank you to CIBJO and the Nomenclature Committee for inviting the RJC to
I'm sorry,
part.
Suzanne, can we have the slide up on the screen just to
thank
help
you.
people? There we are.
Perfect. Thank you. If I may, I might just start off with referring to Ferial then. This is a collaborative process, and, we're all very aware and understand that there is never going to be one guidance document that's going to cover everything from, mine through to retail. And with the RJC guidance and with the CIBJO Blue Books, there's a lot of guidance material out there. So we see this very much as a collaborative effort, references and tools that members at the RJC can refer to, but also across the industry as well. So again, it's understanding these terminologies and the definitions behind them. And you can see this on the screen, the building blocks of business claims. And it really is a building block. It's a hierarchy, it's a stack. We're looking at responsible, which is really the baseline requirements when we're looking at businesses being responsible. That's complying with local regulations, complying to those baseline requirements that businesses need to be or to claim to be responsible. And then from responsible, when you're claiming to be responsible, you can then move up onto ethical. So ethical then looks more into, going beyond responsible. What is looking at the social aspects, looking at the culture of the organization, and then you can start looking at those elements which can claim to be ethical, in addition to those business and international baseline standards. And then once you've gone from responsible, ethical, you then look at sustainable. And obviously the previous panel today talked a lot about sustainable and the discussions around the terminology. And this is really around integrating, these benefits and environmental protection for the longevity. So what are we doing now that's going to be there for the future? I think when it comes to using the terminology, I think it's also important to understand we're not saying this is a standard, standard that are certified against, but these words really are going to be used in unison with the other tools and references out there as well.
So just to understand, so essentially because we're talking about building blocks over here, that if you were going to claim to be acting ethically, the assumption is you're already behaving responsibly.
Exactly, and that's why the stack, as you see it on here, it's that hierarchy, it's that process. Mm-hmm. First you're responsible, then you become ethical, and then you can claim to be sustainable.
Thank you. Ferry, we'll come back to you again with three terms again, which are again often people use them without understanding that there are actual differences between the three of them. That's, I mean, I'll flip the slide in the meantime. And that is origin, source, and provenance. Would you like to explain how we went through this process?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I think the panel before us was saying something like, you know, there's a lot of talk, but we need to see action. And this is, I remember sitting on this stage with Iris, Mel, and others, and we were asked, what does sustainability mean to you? And all three of us had different answers to that. So this is great for us to be aligning as an industry behind what the definition of sustainability actually is, and to give that North Star to people. And it's the same here with origin, source, and provenance. So I will sit in so many panels and I'll watch people talking, and for me, I'm a person that really tries to understand what the other person is saying. And when I hear, you know, origin, source, and provenance being said to mean the same thing, I wonder why they're using such words. So the way that we looked at these three words is, origin is very clear. There you can actually find very strong guidance in the dictionary, whether it's, you know, an American dictionary or a British one. It just means a region. So we're focused here on the where. It could be a country, it could be a region. It's essentially described as the location. For source, it was a bit harder because we actually here looked at the verb, right, the sourcing, and tried to translate it into the noun. And so we decided actually what works really well here is describing source as the how, because currently there is no term that will tell you if this is an artisanal diamond, if this is a industrial diamond, or if this is, you know, produced in a factory. So we said this would be great to define source here as the how. And then the who, plus the where and the how, will give you that beautiful provenance story. So to be able to claim provenance, you need the full story. Where the product came from, whether it's an origin or region, how it was sourced, was it artisanally mined, is it large-scale mined, was it created in a factory, who's behind it, what is the actor? Is the actor ethical? What do they stand for? What standards do they stand for? Or are they an actor that isn't? When you talk about provenance, you need these three elements. And so that's how we aligned as a committee, and that's what we've put out there for public consultation.
In a related matter, let me just flip over there. To get that information, essentially, we need to be able to trace the materials. And again, over here, we deal with forms of tracing over here, which again, many people use interchangeably without fully understanding what they always are referring to. So again, how did we differentiate between the chain of accountability, the chain of custody, and then the more overarching term of traceability?
Here again, so traceability is a cool term now with consumers, but as I was listening to different people describing their traceability mechanisms, I couldn't really follow. So what we try to do here with traceability is we've got technical terms. So most of you would have heard of chain of custody because there's a very clear standard there that focuses on the custody of the product as it's moving along. What's missing is the chain of accountability. So some people will trace through who is in their supply chain, and that's who is accountable from the product as it moves from one hand to the other. That we've described into, or illustrated it into these two clear Venn diagrams. So one is product focused, one is the who in your accountability across the supply chain. And only that blue area of that Venn diagram, if you know who and you know where the product comes from, can you actually claim traceability?
All right. As Farida mentioned earlier, the blue list over here doesn't only deal with terminology that should be used, but also indicates terminology that should not be used. In some cases, we will indicate when we describe descriptive terms in what instances they should be used and not be used, but there are also words that simply should be avoided. And here I'm going to turn to Raluca. The words specifically that we mentioned and that was listed on the screen right at the beginning are terms that we see in marketing campaigns throughout the industry, and these includes words like eco-friendly or environmentally friendly, biodegradable, green, greener, energy efficient, and energy smart. So, Raluca, can you first of all explain why they are problematic, but then also relate more generally about the need to substantiate any type of information, particularly when we are relating to or we're making environmental claims?
Absolutely, and I first wanted to highlight the fact that such an initiative, you don't see it in a lot of other industries. So I would like to pause a little bit to highlight just how important this is that the jewelry industry is leading this. So looking at unique terms that the industry can stand by in order to ensure as high as possible consumer protection and understanding. So definitely, I think this is something for us all to be proud of, and to have so many organizations to be part of this process. Now, the reason for which we've also included terms that we don't advise using is that, of course, one, we need to abide globally by what is it that our consumers understand. We've heard here the expression words matter. So what you end up doing if you keep generic claims like this that are unsubstantiated is, one, you reach two things with your consumers. One is consumer fatigue and complete misunderstanding of any initiative that any such organization would be taking. We've already seen a lot of our consumers not paying attention, not reacting to a lot of huge green claims. That leads to the fact that organizations that actually lead the fight and a lot of initiatives there will absolutely not get the chance to explain their strategies. So what's important for us is to bear in mind how these messages land with consumers and also how we accompany their understanding. Now, you mentioned the lack of substantiation. Well, that's the problem, and that's where we've seen also legislation across the world tackling this. So this list of suggested terms to absolutely avoid is also very much in line with current legislation globally as well as with upcoming legislation. We've seen European Union as well as the United Kingdom very much leading the conversation there on green-related claims and green legislation. And the key term or the key matter there is any claim must be substantiated. You need to explain behind each and every term there. You need to report the impact that you have and then the methods that you employ in order to reduce that impact. Which means claims without having this publicly made justification, you end up, for example, giving the impression to consumers that, let's say, carbon negative, that you actually have no emissions at all. Well, that doesn't happen. You do have emissions, but you take a lot of action to combat or to reduce those type of emissions. So one, you need to justify a lot of those claims. You need to publicly report on them. I always say you need to have a proper certification, third-party audited certification. So certainly with the likes of the RJC there, the jewelry industry is in fantastic hands. So I advise from the smaller players to the larger players to actually follow that certification. And then for any claim that you make, you need to be specific. Is it a part of your process that is energy efficient or carbon negative, or is it your entire product? Chances are your entire product is not covered by it all. So consumers need to have access to that. I come very much also from a marketing perspective. That doesn't mean you can't communicate on your fantastic journey into decarbonization, social empowerment, and a lot of the greater good that you want to do. So the advice not to use these terms absolutely should not go in the direction of green hushing. We've seen so many beautiful examples from our industry. I would like to continue seeing those beautiful examples. And whether you're starting on that journey midway or you're very well advanced, you need to ask your customers to accompany you on that journey. We've seen consumers reacting beautifully at that storytelling. And that also means you invite them to share your experience. So we definitely think this is for the greater positioning of your organization as well as for the greater good you're doing.
Thanks, Raluca. One of the things that we learned in preparing the blue list over here, and in the intention was to cover the entire jewelry pipeline, which obviously includes companies and organizations working in a variety of different industry sectors, with some very large companies, but the majority small companies with different capacities and different abilities to meet not so much the requirements, but at least the recommendations that the document provides. The blue list is a guidance document. It's not a standards document in and of itself, and it's certainly not a compliance system. But where we did get, I wouldn't say pushback, but certainly people felt less comfortable was in some of the sectors with which are dependent either on artisanal mining or on the activities of a lot of smaller firms, and that included the colored gemstone sector. So towards the end of the process, when we were starting to put together the final document, we actually included this disclaimer right at the front of the document that explained that not everybody comes to the table with the same type of capacities. Ken, I'd like to direct not so much a question to you, but to get you to sort of like describe some of the dilemma that we had as a committee, the reason why we included the disclaimer, and maybe the concept of which I think was raised again in the previous discussion on continual improvement. There's the belief that you might stop at in one place, but over a period of time, you can move yourself to a better place.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I would first like to, the word disclaimer, I think, is a little strong. It's good that it's there, because it points out some very good points. But it sometimes might imply that the color stone world don't want to deal with this, that they don't want to comply, and that is not true. The color stone world and the pearl world as well, actually, have issues with at the present time with being able to comply with some of the concepts that have been set out in the blue list. And as you mentioned a moment ago, it is a question of continuous improvement. We will say that the diamond world is ahead of us in terms of that continuous improvement. They've had more opportunity to deal with it, and they have if you like, a less complex supply chain than colored stones. Now, for the audience who maybe who are not au fait with the colored stone world and how those rubies, sapphires, and a myriad of other color stones come to the market. I can give some brief examples that I've given before, and that is let's just take, for example, I'll take a couple of country sources. Let's take Madagascar to begin with. Within Madagascar, we probably have 1,000 small mines, north, south, east, and west of Madagascar, all operated by small artisan miners that are family enterprises. That's how they get their bread and butter, or their rice, if you like, into their stomachs. And when they do the mining, they will collect whatever rough gems that they have found, and they will bring them to a buying office centrally located in Madagascar. Now that two that come to mind would be the Sri Lankan buying office and the Thai buying office, where they will sell their stones, their rough stones. So they're all piled together. So we do know they all come from, we're hoping we know they all come from Madagascar, okay, but that's it. We don't know the conditions of the mining and so on and so forth. How many mines have collapsed or anything like that, we don't know. We can take the same example into East Africa. We can take the same example into Brazil and a host of other places, but at the end of the day, the market is such that all of that material goes into two places in the world. The lesser amount into the Sri Lankan market, where it's all regarded as Sri Lankan material, by the way, even though it comes from a bunch of other different places. And then the rest, which is the vast majority, goes into a small town called Chanthaburi in Thailand. And there it's all mixed up again from all the different buying offices in Chanthaburi, and sold out to several thousand dealers' offices. And there is literally no chain of anything, you know, with those stones. Now we complicate things further, quite simply like this. Even if we know initially where some of this material might come from, one of the things that Chanthaburi is famous for is treating gemstones. So they will heat treat, they will diffuse, do all sorts of different things. And the appearance of the stones will be quite different. And then they will cut and polish them in Chanthaburi. Or maybe a Bangkok dealer will take the stones, take them out to Bangkok, and cut and polish them in Bangkok. But there's no chain here. Because we're talking about a lot of very small companies. Now, one thing that Bangkok is internationally famous for is its colored gemstones. And so everyone from around the world comes to Bangkok or Chanthaburi to buy for the rest of the world. And when they buy for the rest of the world, they often ask, where does this come from? And unless they have a gemological report, which they mostly do not have for 99% of the stones being bought, you still don't know where they come from. Those stones now will go into the UK market with the UK dealers. They go into the American market with the American dealers. And it is challenging, to say the least, for the overall colored stone industry to be transparent about, you know, where, the how, and the who. And it sounds, with all I'm saying here, I'm being negative. But I'm not. All I'm doing is giving the facts. So these are the facts. Now we need to jump on that bandwagon of continuous improvement and find out ways of improving that, so that we do have at least some chain some chains that will trace things back and allow us to in the color stone industry to comply with the blue list, because that's what they want to do. But they need help and encouragement to do that. And again, I would question the use of a disclaimer there. It's information. It's rather than a disclaimer. We're not disclaiming anything. I don't know whether that covers what you wanted to hear, but.
Well, that's you telling us the way it is, so we're not going to argue. I think we've given sort of background over there. Before we intend to open this up to you guys over here, and we seem to be running essentially on time, but we're going to just deal with two more elements. The consultation process started literally 4 months ago in Paris, and we've been collecting information since then. It continues as we speak, and this is actually the last public event that we were planning as part of the process. I'd like to turn to Purvi over here, who's been collecting the data and can provide us some idea with the initial results. I'd also urge that the Blue List is available online, and you can download it. It's about 30 odd pages of reading material over here, and you can all look at it for yourself. But Purvi, can you give us some idea of what we've learned over the past few months?
Thank you, Steve. So we've had really great degree of feedback. So we've had quite a large number of respondents giving us really excellent feedback. They've come from across Europe, the US, Australia, and Asia, and from small and large companies, trade associations, and subject matter experts. So it's been really invaluable input across the jewelry industry. We've also had feedback from across the jewelry industry, representative of the coverage that CIBJO has across so many different materials that are used in jewelry, as well as the retailers at the end of the value chain. We are still going through the large number of responses and trying to pull out and aggregate information and collate it all. Overall, we have had very strong feedback from respondents that they are generally in agreement with the definitions that have been proposed. But that is also to say that we've also had a far smaller number of people who have commented that they have disagreed. All of this is really important for us. And in addition to that, we've had a number of inputters really giving us great commentary around what they consider is important for us to use to uplift the Blue List. So all of this feedback is invaluable in helping us to really review the positions that we have put forward and reflect the feedback of the wider industry. Just to share some of the interesting examples of feedback we've received. So, and I think Ken has touched on this as well, around origin. Our definitions, we've had some feedback suggesting that they're far too focused on materials that are mined, and could we just ensure that we are accommodating of elements like pearls, which is a great and valuable point. So we are looking into what we can do to ensure that that definition is truly all-encompassing and inclusive, which is the intention of the Blue List. We have interestingly also had a lot of feedback asking us to create a checklist. And I think that this is another great forum in which we need to be very clear what we are trying to do and what we're not trying to do. This is not a mandatory guide, it's a reference guide. Fundamentally, context and jurisdictions and legislation will always apply first. But this is just, as Farial said at the start, allowing everybody to speak the consumer in a unified voice so that we don't create confusion and we don't erode that extremely critical issue of consumer confidence. So our intention here is not to create a checklist that would be far too prescriptive for the breadth and scale of what we are trying to achieve. And a lot of the feedback asked us for that, which is an interesting learning as well, because clearly there is demand for something along those lines. On words like sustainable and sustainability, and I think other panelists have touched on this as well, the feedback has been across an entire spectrum. We've had some respondents saying you should never use this word, it's too generic and our definition is too soft. And then on the other side, we've had respondents telling us that our definition is too difficult for anybody to achieve. So we are in the space of having to really deeply unpack this and getting it to what we think is right for the current moment and ensuring that we are representative of the majority view. And then maybe just a final one as well. I think Raluca touched on this. You know, the words, we asked respondents to tell us if we should add any words or if there are other words that we should include in the list of avoid using. And one of the words a few respondents have said is define carbon neutral. And words like that will be defined by technical experts, those that are, leading in the space of carbon neutrality technical standards. So we will not be moving forward with that. But just to share some insights in terms of how rich the feedback has been and how thoughtful the feedback has been, and to also share that this feedback has been invaluable and every element of it is being considered in order to truly create something that is useful for the industry and can be adopted by every player within the industry, no matter how large or small. And we've tried to be as mindful as we possibly can to the certain contexts of many of the players of our industry who are often very small and often lack capacity and resource.
Thanks, Purvi. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, that's all good. Thank you.
Sorry. Before we open it to the floor, and we'll have somewhere most probably between 11 or 12 minutes maybe to take questions. We just want to talk about where we're going to go from here. The document that, like I said, we began this consultation process 4 months ago. The document itself that appears online was a document that was sort of closed 4 months ago and hasn't been changed. But because it's a consultation process, of course, the assumption is that there are going to be changes and amendments before the final document itself is released for approval. So I'd like to actually turn to our two co-chairs on my right and discuss how the information that we've been receiving and that maybe we'll receive today is going to be used in producing the final document. And then maybe I'll direct that to Feriel and then to Gaetano. In terms of, this is a CIBJO document, so then when does the blue list itself become an official CIBJO document? At the moment, it's a draft. So first, Feriel, if you want to relate to how will we take what we have learned and adapt the current draft of the document?
It's a tough one. There's a plan. The plan is, as all consultation processes occur, you take the feedback on, you bring it back to the committee, we go through all the useful, and I call it useful because there's a lot of feedback that we actually can't use for the consultation process, as Purvi described, to try and reflect the view of the majority. It would go through a legal review, and the hope is that we would have had a final live document, right? It's nothing just is finalized and it is what it is. Like every time documents are evolved to adapt to new legislation, to new emerging risks, etc. But a final version of the blue list for that moment in time for the trade to sort of rally behind. But if the feedback is one that requires us to go back for public consultation, then that's the option that we'll take. Essentially, the objective remains the same. We want alignment. We want adoption. We want to be able to speak to the same, speak the same language to the consumer to address this consumer confidence risk, which is a real risk. It is a real risk for the jewelry industry. So that's the objective, and no matter what it needs for us to get there, to get adoption, that's the route we'll take. So it could be one and done launch, or it could be one review and then done launch.
And Gaetano, then once we have that final document, when does it become official?
Let's start, and I continue what Purvi said in terms of the comments related to the public consultation we have received. And we have received, honestly, a very massive quantity of comments. The original plan was, and honestly still is, that we are going to close the consultation and present during the Congress in Paris by the end of October, and then present everything to the board, which in principle is okay. But we have thought, due to the fact that there are so many proposals so many opinions, so many inputs, I would say, that most probably we, from our side, need more time to revise all this thing. But by the way, it will be quite soon. We want to present something to the board in any case during the Congress, and then the board will decide what to do. But let me go back to two elements. Number one, the blue list. Why has been defined the blue list? Because in CIBJO we have the blue books. And the blue books are called like this simply because at the time, at the very beginning, 1926, in Paris, they start preparing all the standards at the time. And the book where they were taking note was blue. So the cover was blue. So that's why simply blue books. Where we are going, at the end, the blue list will become another blue book. But it's important to underline that every book and every work that is presented, which is available free of charge in the website, is a living document. And also the blue list, even though when become the blue book, it will be a living document and it will be, let's say, very active, I believe, because the interest is very high. Again, as Stephen said previously, is not a rule, is not a legislation, is not a standard, is something that has the philosophy to help to better serve our consumers. Because at the end of the day, if we all describe our jewelry, stones, diamond, color stones, pearl, whatever, nearly in the same way, I don't want to say exactly the same way, but nearly in the same way, we all get and improve our reputation as a reliable industry. And let me conclude saying that all the organizations today present in this room, RJC, World Diamond Council, Natural Diamond Council, Watch and Jewelry Initiative, and so on, all together, collectively, can continue in giving a wonderful service to the industry and moreover to the consumer as well.
Could we turn the lights on so that we can see the people in the audience? At the top? Maybe. And also, could we get the screen back over here, just the text on the screen? Not sure if anybody's listening. Oh, okay. Okay, this is the list of terms over here that are being dealt with over here. We'd be happy at this stage over here if anybody would like to comment, suggest, question some of the things that were there. The first person to have is Iris van der Werken, whose hands up, who I would note was also a member of our committee. So Iris was part of the discussion.
Originally, no, first of all, I think this is a really great work for the industry for many different reasons, but I think we talked about it earlier for the trust to the consumer. We need unified language. And also when you look at many claims that are done by companies, it's sometimes incredibly confusing and not correct. I think it's also being proactive towards the regulations. In many different fields, okay, you have the green claims, but even though there's omnibus, what we see is that everything is going to go much more an evolution from management systems of companies to individual product information. So again, I think it's great. I just wanted to say that it's, I think till date, a job well done. The Watch and Jewellery Initiative 2030 also has given our feedback to the document that I think was mostly constructive and productive, I hope. And I wish you well in the process. And I think once that it's set, we're also happy to promote it to a wider audience and have advocacy on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Actually, this is, as most of you know, terminology is very dear to me. And CIBJO recently has embraced another branch of our industry, which is valuers. And Ken Scarrett, he's chairing a working group that is starting just right now, involving valuers and also asking them about their own terminology. So when I see source there are so many words that might have a different meaning or nuances when we are talking about the so-called second-hand market for valuers or appraisers, if you want to use both terms. So I'm really happy that all of those terms are around the clock to put people that our stakeholders communicating clearly are put in place by CIBJO, like a thesaurus or a kind of dictionary of the significance of terms. In the blue books, we have definitions of gemological terms and the gem materials and metals. And finally, now we have other terms that are widely used in marketing and people don't understand. And finally, there will be a path towards clarity on the communication. So I'm really happy that this is happening. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rui.
Yeah, thanks on that. I learned so much. I didn't know that, you know, before walking into this committee, I didn't know there was a difference between, I know this is going to sound crazy, but antique and vintage. I had no idea. So that technical knowledge was amazing. It was such an amazing learning curve for all of us.
Thanks. This is my second time listening to the presentation because I was at Initiatives in Arts and Culture and I shared some thoughts there. I'm not going to repeat those because some other things have occurred to me, and thank you for giving me the chance to dive more deeply. I notice you don't have recycled metals under source, so I'm curious to know why. I'm also curious to know why, as part of your process for consultation, you intend to be led by the majority and not take into account other expert views. That so what then this is eventually representing is what has already become conventional. But as somebody that works across sectors, I see conflict between some of the definitions you have and how it works in other mineral categories, but also how it works in sustainability more generally, like in investment taxonomies, for example. Now, does that matter or not? Possibly, possibly not. So I'm just curious to know, because your community that's given you feedback will be pretty much all jewellery. Is that an issue? And then is therefore going with the majority just normalising what's already conventional, but what may not actually be right and could create broader confusion with your stakeholders, whether that's in investment or suppliers, etc. That's my question.
Thanks, Estelle. I really encourage you specifically to submit your commentary in writing for the committee, because, and I think, is it today, because my concern is, you know, you've got so much insight, but you haven't submitted yet. So I really look forward to that submission. The second point is, we trust the process, and the process is alignment, but it's also legal review. Now, alignment is the majority, as we always, and you bring people along, but the legal review captures all of that other stuff that you were speaking about. So there is oomph, legality, and real investment behind this. So I wouldn't worry about that, but please do submit your feedback.
Right. Can I also just make one point about the recycled metal? The process that we're talking about, like I said, started in about 2018, and then there was a hiatus over the COVID period, but sort of carried on through to this year. During that period, there was the whole discussion that was taking place about recycled metals, of which CIBJO was part of, and which John Mulligan, who's sitting over there, spoke about sort of at more length yesterday. We deliberately at that stage over here, because when we had that discussion and that came out at the same time, we didn't want there to be any type of contradiction over here. So there was a deliberate decision at that stage to talk about recycled gemstones, and again, it was looked at largely from a consumer perspective, rather from the perspective of the industry. But that was because of the other process that was taking on at the same time. Gaetano, you wanted to add something?
No, I want to say simply something that I said, but underline the fact that every document in CIBJO is a living document, meaning that is constantly going forward. We certainly do not pretend to be the warden of the truth, but certainly the fact that everybody may contribute, and we are totally open, means that the revision is constant revision of every single committee, commission, and sector. And believe me, I can see, because normally we are receiving all the emails, I have to say that all the members of committee, commission, and sectors are working every day. You know, the salary is fantastic, it's a long line of zeros. But maybe one day, you know, sometimes I propose to the board, say maybe we have to add another 3, 4 zeros to this, to this, to that, but still remain zero. But what is bringing us to what we are doing? Elements which are passion, credibility, reputation, honorability, transparency, ethical principles, and I can continue the list of what this industry collectively means toward the consumers.
I think Guido's got a question. I think that might need to be the last question over here, because
quickly, not a question, just
or a comment.
A comment. For those of you who don't know, I'm heading the German Association for Jewelry and Watches, and I'm saying that for a reason. I would really like to congratulate on the work you have done so far. I think it's extremely important and it's great. I've submitted my comments online, but I didn't have much because you've done a great work. I think this document is so important that we really need to think of ways to have it lived in the market once it's finished. And in order to do so, and that's why I said I'm heading the German Association, is we need to translate that in other languages as well. That will be difficult. A very easy and general example for the German language is when you drive your car and you want to bypass something, or you drive your car and you want to run something over. In German, that's exactly the same word, right? You just pronounce it differently. It's umfahren and umfahren. For your list, a problem that I see, or I saw right from the beginning, is I love that you differentiate between origin, source, and provenance. Problem is, in Germany, there is no word for provenance. It's exactly the same word as for origin. Other industries have already solved that problem by simply bringing provenance in a sort of German style into the dictionary, right? Now we have that word, but we had to make it up. And I think that it will be a long way, and we also need a committee if we want to put this into German. I would really like to be a part of doing that, but for German and for other languages as well, we really need to give it time and give that some consideration, because not everything we have in there will be easy to translate, and I know you are all aware of it, because at least Raluca, Purvi, Ferial, Gaetano, all of your languages are not, mother tongues are not English, so you know that, but I just wanted to point out that I think thinking about it is very important. Thank you.
So that means that you can make a revision of the German dictionary and add new words. Otherwise, Estelle will be upset. So.
I will do it and nobody else can look at it.
Guido, one thing I do in language just generally is when there is no sort of word, for example, if there's no French word for something, I'll just use the English one. But this point of translation is quite funny, and it's dear to our heart, because we are saying language matters, right? So of course the translation is going to be very, very important. But I also got concerns around translation from, you know, the US trade, who find it really important to them for it to be translated into American English. So the way we spell jewellery is very different. And for uptake, that's so critically important culturally. And that's important feedback for us to take on. Thanks.
Can I just jump on another part of what Guido was saying, and that's the alignment of the implementation of these principles, because that will be absolutely fundamental. And that's why it's important to have just so many organizations part of this and the entire industry, because we'll need to apply it and we will be each other's stakeholders. So how you hold yourself accountable, I would say this is absolutely the race to the top, and I think that's exactly the way in which our industry should be going. So it's an absolutely fair point.
Well, thank you all for coming, and I was going to say, none of us are going anywhere. If any of you have other comments or got questions, and we really encourage you still to go to the website, to download, read the whole document, and we'd like to hear from you. Thank you very much.